Hey, you're listening to Innovators Can Laugh, the fun startup podcast. I'm your host, Eric Milcher. On ICL, we interview an innovative entrepreneur in the European tech startup scene every week. My goal is to have my guests share their wisdom while having a little fun in the process. Now let's dive in. Irina, izgledaš trhotno, bunu vam seda razgoveriam s vas.
Oh, you did it very well. I'm still having some remarks on your pronunciation, but wow, I'm very impressed.
Thank you. My guest today is the beautiful Irina Obushtarova. She's the founder of the Recursive, which provides independent media coverage and is the main voice of the digital economy and startup scene here in Southeastern Europe. Prior to founding the Recursive, Irina has held leadership roles in sales, business development, and marketing for various tech companies in Bulgaria and Austria. Irina, welcome to Innovators Can Laugh.
Hey, Eric, thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, no, I've been super excited to chat with you for a long time now. And I was doing some research on you. And one of the things that I was curious about is in your Twitter profile, you have that describes you. It says millennial, European, and Queddenker or Queddenker. I'm not even sure how to pronounce that. What is that and what does it mean? Queddenker.
Oh, okay. So I guess you're referring also to my German part of my personality. So I spent like 11 years of my life in Austria. And Querdenker, it's how you pronounce it, is the one who is like a lateral thinker. So you can make associations in different areas, in different disciplinaries, and this makes you be a bit more creative, a bit more associative. And because I've never managed to be a specialist in anything, I was always like, how you call them?
A jack of all trades. Yeah.
A jack of all trades, a multi-potentialite. I also like this word. And this made me actually very good in sales because I don't think that there are many types of people and walks of life which I cannot talk to. So that's what I can. I'm just jack of all trades, master of none.
No, I love that too. I mean, a lot of people say, become the best at your niche. And I've always disagree with that. I think it's better to be, top 20% in a few things versus, top 5% in one thing, because the way that the world changes, it's better to be good at many different things as your experience tells. So I want to get into the Recursive, but before we go there, I read something else that caught my attention because I used to wait tables. And I saw that you worked as a waitress for a few years to fund your studies. And I worked for a waiter many years. The most embarrassing moment I ever had, I gave a table. They weren't English speaking. This is back in Houston, but I gave them the wrong dessert. What I mean by the wrong dessert, I gave them the fake dessert, the one that had been sitting out for days. The cake was real, but it was many days old. And the ice cream wasn't even ice cream. It was like this lard that we call Crisco, and it didn't even melt. And so I didn't realize it until after they left the restaurant. And I realized, holy crap, I just gave them the fake dessert. That was my biggest and most embarrassing mistake as a waiter. What's your most embarrassing thing as a waitress that happened to you?
You're bringing me back in time. So I started as a waitress actually already in my hometown in Plovdiv. So I was waiting tables in the summer and partially also during school. It was a summer kind of bar. It was a very weird place. I had a very weird uniform. So I think this is one of the most embarrassing things about the job that I did.
What was weird about the uniform? What was wrong with the uniform?
Well, back then in the early 2000s in Bulgaria, there was not much awareness on the topic of sexism and, stuff like this. So I was wearing a very short skirt and a very short top, and people would look at me as a piece of meat. And I was a shy girl in school, surprisingly, and so I didn't feel very comfortable with that. But I think this really, took me out of my comfort zone. And at some point, I just learned how to make people respect me regardless of the way I look. And it was actually a very good training, and it gave me, of course, a very good, basis for me to earn money when I moved abroad.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There's a few of those restaurants in the States. They're actually chains. I don't know if they have chains here in Southeastern Europe. Yeah. Hooters or Twin Peaks or one of those. And I think they're very popular among the single men, ages like 20 to 40. Probably a lot of married men go there too. I don't know why I just said single. I don't want to Okay.
That was a funny story that I had when I moved back to Austria. So I don't know if you're aware, but Bulgarians have a different type of nodding. It's basically totally upside down.
I've
So
read
I
about this.
remember my colleagues being very confused. They would ask me, "Hey, what you do that?" As a new colleague and help out. And
Yeah.
I would just nod in the way that I was used to nod, which is Bulgarian, would be like this. And they would say, "Why wouldn't she do that? Like, what is wrong with her?" And then they would see me doing it and they were totally confused.
Yeah. It's funny. It's probably you had a smile on your face while you were like shaking your head no at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's something which is totally subconscious, and even today, I'm not even sure how to nod. I think I'm doing it more like the Indian way because I don't know where I am.
You're probably just
And
like,
then when you, yeah,
yeah, you probably just need to do like a full circle, you know?
I'm sometimes it's, I don't, yeah, it's very, very awkward. So don't make me nod.
Okay, I won't make you nod. All right, on this show, you got to clearly say yes or no. That's the standard. Okay,
Good.
okay. So your one of your first jobs was working for a magazine in Vienna, and I just want to kind of get an idea of like, is that when you had your aha moment that hey, I like media? I want to do something like this for the rest of my career. I mean, did you
Mm.
discover that there?
I was studying media, so I was waiting for this moment when I would start working in my disciplinary. And what was weird about it is how I got my job. So I actually first modeled for the magazine. A friend of mine was doing an article about the women from Eastern Europe who are, marvelous.
Did
They
he?
are
Did he?
educated. They look
Did he,
good. They so
I know. I married one. I know.
So, in any case, when they were doing the interview for me, they would give a title to my interview. And the title was Irina can do everything and she wants everything. So that was a bit awkward. And shortly after that, when I met the publisher of the magazine, he was currently hiring people and I was supposed to introduce myself. And I said, okay, I modeled for you. I was part of the story. And then he was like, but I can't remember you. Who are you? And then I just quoted the title. Irina will and Sam Arnett. So, wants everything and she can do everything. And he looked at me and he said, hey, is that true? Can you do that? And I was like, okay, I've been waiting tables for the past 4 years. I have not finished my education yet. What should I answer? And I said, yes. And this is how I got actually my first sales job in the magazine. And for 4 months, I was doing cold calls. I didn't sell anything, which was super frustrating. And then at some point, things started, turning. So it wasn't so much that I loved working for media. I just, I don't know, realized my potential in sales. It was very good training.
Okay. So cold calling for 4 months and not getting any sales. Now that tells me that you are just plain persistent, Arina, because I think most people would have either quit or realized, hey, this is not for them. Why did you continue working in this role? Were you able to like go into another position or what happened there?
I was very desperate at the end of the 4 months. I was wondering why are they tolerating me? I was already thinking what else should I do, but there was not much that I could do because, as I said, I didn't have any kind of formal education finished. I was still studying. The only experience that I had was waiting tables. So I guess I'm very grateful that they were patient with me. And at some point, I actually even got like head of sales. But
Get head of sales when you can't even make a sale.
well, with sales, there is something esoteric happening. I can't really say. I think it's a lot which has to do with the attitude. At some point I learned that if I get too many no's in a row, then for a while I need to stop so that I don't influence my next call or my next email or whatever in my next meeting. I think learning to have a thick skin and not to be frustrated about having no's was the most important part. And the other part was that I started learning to develop my network. So I wasn't performing sales, but I would go to every possible event during the week. And
Uh-huh.
from Monday to Friday, I was everywhere out. And at first I would know one people maybe in the room, and then I would know three people in the room. Then at some point I felt very well connected. And when you have this network, then things start, moving. And then really applied for a job after that. because everything, all the opportunities that I was getting also for sales or for job, for career, they were coming from the network. I am persistent. My ex-boyfriend will probably say I'm stubborn. I don't give up easily. No.
Yeah. No, there's something you said there that I really really loved, and that was if you get too many no's in a row, it's time to like pause and step back because a lot of people continue. There a lot of people think, "Hey, I need X number of no's and before I get my first yes," and they keep beating down that path and they don't stop, right? But the smart thing to do would be just as you said, "Hey, take a break, kind of like reevaluate, maybe the process of what you're doing or what you're communicating and just take a step back and maybe try
Mm,
something different." And I think a lot of people they get burned out because they're getting a lot of no's or they're getting a lot of rejection or a lot of failures, but they're not really trying to change things up or at least try something different. Okay, so you're meeting all these people, you're getting all these connections, and we're still in Vienna. I mean, we haven't came back to Sofia yet, correct? Okay, okay. And at some point, you had this idea about helping expats who are relocating to Vienna, and so you co-founded this platform or website called Welcome Buddy. And tell us a little bit about that. I mean, how did you get that up and running? Were you able to bootstrap the entire thing? What did it offer to expats?
Do you know the attitude how we celebrate our failures? So that was my failure basically. I co-founded the platform. We never really got live. The team unfortunately split up. And years after that I learned this is the most common, problem that is happening in startups. It's not so much the funding, it's not so much the strategy, but it's often actually the conflict in the team. What we wanted to do is basically share our experience. And I had a difficult start in the beginning, but maybe because I was also again persistent and always trying to be a bit more innovative in how I approach life. I learned all the different tricks of how to deal in a new system and how to get to know people and so on and so forth. Then I thought that if I share this experience with others, then they would have an easier head start. That was the idea of the platform. We wanted to provide very, very practical information on how to set up your life and how to walk through all the administration hurdles that you have in the beginning, but maybe in an easier way.
We need that in
And
Bucharest. We need that in Romania.
well, you need this everywhere. And,
Yeah.
this kind of people, they're also very interesting for many brands because they're very hard to catch. They are not reading traditional media. They might be on social media, but they're still not in the networks that you would usually find them.
Yeah.
So, and they're about to set up their life from scratch. So they would need everything, phone contract, insurance, babysitter, schools, and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, as I said, we didn't really manage to stick as a team. At some point, we split up, and I still think that it's a great idea that we had. But we missed it back then, and
Was
I
the
learned
entire
how not to do a startup, basically.
was the entire team local? Were they all based in Vienna or were some people remote?
Well, they were in the beginning, and then one of the co-founders got divorced. He moved to Ukraine. He married a Ukrainian girl. Although he was there only for the project, he somehow stayed there. Then the other co-founder was a singer, so at some point she decided to devote herself to her singer career and move with her husband to Dubai, who at some point said, "I'm not going to support you anymore in this project." And I was there alone, and I was thinking, should I wait tables to finance the project, or should I find like a new job? And
This sounds like a telenovela, you know? That's what it sounds like. They go off and they meet some stranger and get married and
I think my life is like full of with stories like this. But the good part about it is that I really got into the startup life. I started going to all those conferences. I started learning about digital marketing, which back then was actually totally different from the way that the big brands were doing it. Very industrious, very performance driven, and so on and so forth. And I also got to know all these amazing people that happened to be at startup conferences. And I fell in love with the vibe, this optimism, this cooperative attitude, and would kind of, support you and cheer you up. And I didn't know that from before.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was the upside of the startup.
Okay, so you go back to Sofia and you found it like an international outlet of trending topics in Sofia. Like, how did that come about and how did you get that off the ground?
It's another funny story. So I have two friends in Vienna. We were like a clique. So we would hang together at Saturday. We would be friends. We would share this saddest moment together. And at some point, they wanted to incorporate trending topics. It was before that, it was like a small project in a publishing house that they wanted to do like a real thing out of it. So they started working on that, and they always imagined that we would be the three of us. They would even know doing the photos, and they would say, okay, this going to look so well. We need a female co-founder. Why don't you join? For 6 months, they were doing that. And for 6 months, I was saying no. And the only reason that I was saying no is that back then I already knew that I want to move back to Bulgaria. During my startup experimentation, I fell in love with a guy who was living in Sofia. We've been having, this long distance relationship, very funny Moroccan living in Sofia. I was a Bulgarian living in Vienna, and then we met in Istanbul. And at some point I thought, okay, so I will move back. My brother was already back from London here. I saw this, very cool community happening around innovation and startup. So for 6 months, I was saying no. And then at some point I said, hey guys, if you really want to work with me, then you have to open trending topics in Sofia. And I think there is a potential because the market is developing so fast, and I can develop that for you. So 1.5 years later, after they incorporated and they launched their own media platform, one of the co-founders called me and said, hey, Irina, let's do it. Go. We need editors. You need to find them. And then things started happening very easily. I ran into the right people, although when I moved back to Sofia, I knew only 2 people in Sofia. Not much. I didn't have any kind of network.
Yep.
But sometimes when things start happening very easily, then you know that you're on the right path.
Yeah. What do you think, what would you say to anybody who's interested, specifically somebody like maybe from the States or Western Europe, when they're asking you, like, what is the startup ecosystem like in Southeastern Europe? What is your answer to that?
Well, I would say that, innovation can come from very unexpected places. And Southeast Europe is kind of a place like that. People don't really know much about it. I'm not even sure that many Americans know where it is geographically. Sorry for that joke, but
no, it's not. It's not a joke. When I told people I was moving to Romania, people were like, "Hey, what is that? Like an amusement park in Italy?"
Yeah. So yes, and what I find very curious is that for a very long period, this region has been struggling economically. So this gave the birth to people who are very creative, who are thinking very much out of the box. And when they do startup, they do it in a very creative way. They tend to do it with much less money than founders, let's say in Berlin or in the US would do it. They're very robust. So, economic crisis, a financial crisis. What do we have now? Energy crisis and the post-COVID crisis. I think these guys are so used to crisis that they know how to go through that. And at the same time, Bulgarians, especially in my generation, they were moving abroad right after school. So we were emigrating because we thought that there will be better opportunities somewhere in the West. And at some point, many people started returning. And these are guys who have international experience, who have a totally different perspective on the world. And they brought their experience here in order to build global company. I think this is amazing. I really found my place back here. A couple of years ago, when I was living in Vienna, I would never have thought that I would move back to Bulgaria. I always thought, maybe I would move to another country somewhere in Europe.
Yeah.
But Bulgaria, no way. And then the whole trend started turning. So I think we are very good at setting up companies who are supposed to be international from day one. This is another typical thing about the startup ecosystem here is that the domestic market, they're very small and they're often not very sophisticated. So they wouldn't pay for your product, which means that most of the companies start selling to the US, to the UK, to Germany very, very early on.
Yeah.
And this is quite often critical for a startup. How are you going to set up your scaling strategy? How are you going to grow internationally?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, the adoption, a lot of startups that I talk to here, I ask them, like, where's the majority of your customers? The States. Because the adoption is just much easier there. It's much easier to get customers to see the value of your product versus here in the local scene where their risk appetite is not as high. So yeah, and it's so admirable startups here in this region who do go international. And what I mean by that, it's like in the States, you're access to 50 different states, and you can also lump UK, Canada, and Australia in there pretty easily, right? Here, if you want to just go next door 200 miles away, that's an entirely different language, entirely different custom way of doing things in business. And the fact that companies here can do that, it's just so admirable because once they've got like three or four under their belt and they've got a process in place, then there's no reason why they can't be global. So I definitely agree with you there. And the brain drain, it's something that's quite common. I think here in Romania too, as you talk about Bulgaria, a lot of people leaving the country, and there's just
So
so much opportunity for people who do want to create something and create a business and come back because there's so much opportunity. You were going to say,
you mentioned the World Company thing, so the expat kind of platform. That was the time when I started looking at the migration streams in the European Union. And when I looked at the map of the brain drain in Bulgaria and Romania, it made me really, really sad because I was
yeah,
thinking these regions, they're actually, skipping or they're losing future because a lot of the young people who are actually smart and ambitious, they moved abroad. And at some point I thought, I shouldn't be facilitating Romanians and Bulgarians integrate to Austria. I should be
yeah,
doing the other thing. And a lot of Bulgarians abroad, they were very negative about their home country. Actually,
yes,
Bulgarians in Bulgaria are also very negative. I think it's
yeah,
kind of like similar with the Romanians. We're
they are
very bad
too.
ambassadors.
Yeah,
We are very bad ambassadors for that region. We always think that, the grass is greener somewhere and here everything is like very shitty.
yeah,
And I thought, hey, we can keep on complaining or we can take things in our hands. And back then I was, how old? Like, I don't know, close to 30. And I thought, if I'm not able to take responsibility in my 30s, then when? I need to move back and contribute in the way that I believe that I can contribute the most.
yeah. No, I feel for you. I feel exactly the same way. I mean, my kids, they're Romanian American. And if we're going to have a future here, then I want to play my part and help, entrepreneurs because I feel like entrepreneurs are the ones that have the vision and not just a vision for what they want to achieve, but also a vision what they want their country to look like in the years ahead. So that's why I do my part or try to do my part.
We
Adina,
can speak a lot about entrepreneurship, but what I want to say, I think I can say about the Bulgarians, I don't know so much about the Romanians, but I think we're very similar. A lot of them have this victimized kind of view on the world, like someone else's fault for what is happening here. And entrepreneurs in this region, they're the opposite and they're the exception, where they say, I see a problem. Okay, I see a market niche that I'm going to actually work towards, contributing for the solution to that problem. So they are very solution oriented. And this is why I believe that entrepreneurial mindset, regardless if you're a startup founder, even if you're like an employee, if you have this, it needs to be supported because it is a region with a lot of problems. But these selling their market niches, there's so many opportunities.
yeah.
You can basically copy paste solutions that you have seen somewhere around the world and just, apply them here. You don't even have to be super innovative to find, the next big thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So another question that I had for you, and I totally agree with you, Adina, is the recursive. Where did that name come from? What does it mean to you?
I was sleepless one night. I'm not a good sleeper. I was looking for a name of the company. I was really tenacious about having a .com domain, and it's hard nowadays. It's very hard. So I would look for a name that would imply future, would imply technology, would imply innovation, but without using these words in itself because they're very misused already today.
Yeah.
So at some point I ran into the term recursive. I didn't know what it meant. And then I started researching and then I opened a totally new world because it is an approach in programming. It is an approach also in mathematics and psychology, linguistics. Noam Chomsky speaks about the recursive language and it's pretty much something that is very typical for humans. If we can think in a recursive way, there is an author who speaks about the recursive mind. Then we can make references about the present, but also the future and the past in one sentence. We can build very complex structures. And if you amplify that with power of technology, then we come to the point which people call superintelligence because we can do recursion endlessly. Um,
Oh, okay. Okay. Now I get it.
and
Okay.
it really got me excited because it was very philosophical. It had an R. I believe that every good brand has an R because it gives like authority to the whole sounding of the whole thing. And my parents, they met in math school, so they are mathematicians. And I value mathematics. I was good at that in school. And at some point, I realized that actually the Fibonacci sequence, if you want to calculate the next member, in the sequence, then you would have to use the recursive function. And it reminded me very much of the golden ratio. And then I was like, okay, if I have the golden ratio in the name of my company, and even if no one knows about it, I would be super happy.
Yeah.
And I found a condomain for it.
Okay. Interesting.
But, my whole team was against it. They always said, my God, this is so complicated. And I remember myself staying at the whiteboard and trying to explain to them the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio and what is the connection between this. So, yes, basically made like a leader's decision. I did a hard decision and said, but it's going to be this one. And at some point, they started knowing it.
Good.
Because innovation happens in a recursive way. Sorry for, I need to get rid of that. So you have to imagine, so you have one invention, then you have another invention, and based on the two inventions, then you develop the next one and the next one and the next one. It's a recursion again. So there is the same recursive innovation. And at some point, it totally fits to the whole concept. And we wanted to adopt it also in our philosophy in the way that, I don't know if you have read the claim under the logo. It's called Story Shape Story. Okay. Which has a recursion in the statement, meaning that I believe every story which is inspiring, which is kind of like a success story, is going to give the confidence to the next one to be more entrepreneurial, to believe in their success, which is super important in the startup life. Yeah. And I think that in this way, we will inspire a next generation of entrepreneurs and maybe more people to stay in the country, to move back to the country, to not be brain drained.
Okay. Well, what's next for the Recursive? I mean, you guys have already kind of established yourself as the main media source for finding out about innovation and startups here in this region. But what do you think? What do you think the next 3 to 5 years look like?
I have to admit that right now we're exactly in the process where we want to define a bit more clear which would be the next step. The one thing that is clear is definitely that we need to grow geographically. I think anyway, we want to expand to the other countries in Central and Eastern Europe because I think they share very similar challenges we do in Bulgaria and Romania, in Greece. So geographical expansion is one thing. The second thing is we are looking for a business model which is scalable. And right now, what we do depends pretty much on people. We're doing a lot of content campaigns for our customers because this is what we can do best. That's our talent. Deal with create content and distribute it to different channels. But this is very exhaustive when it comes to, people. The more customers you have, the more people you will have. So it's not really scalable. And I've been struggling with the business model of media for, 15 years. The whole digitalization disrupted this industry to a place where it brought them actually to extinction. A lot of, for instance, the regional media, they don't exist anymore. Local papers, they don't exist anymore. And still, we don't really manage to find a sustainable business model for media. For journalism, I wouldn't say media, for journalism. There are probably 10 brands in the world who get paid for the journalism. And most of the other media outlets, they do events, they do marketing, they do advertising, which makes them very dependent. So we're trying to be innovative here, find something which is new, something that maybe relates to business media. I think business media has a very unique position in the business ecosystem because you basically talk to all the different stakeholders. You're kind of like in the middle. Can we leverage this position? But I cannot share more than that. We're still working on some concepts that we would like to test out. The other thing and the third thing that is very important for us is to learn to leverage our data. Basically, journalists, they do collect data. They do data mining all the time. The only problem is that it's not structured. It's actually put in stories. And I think we're very close to the fact that we're going to start also structuring this data. And then we will probably see new kind of dependencies. We will see new kind of relations, and we will see even better in our journalism.
Great. Good to hear. Okay. 2 last fun questions. So that way we can get to know your personality a little bit better, Irina. First question is, what is an unusual food or drink that you consume? An unusual food or drink that you consume?
I'm not even sure how it's called. I guess it's unusual for many people in the West when you eat actually the organs of, let's say, the lamb and the the beef and so on and so forth. I really love that. I
Okay.
think many people in the West feel disgusted about it, but I do treasure this kind of like very traditional cuisine
Yeah.
where you would aim not to have weight that you're cooking and anything that you're slaughtering. I
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. No, no, no. The Mexican culture is like that too. I mean, they have a dish called lengua, and they have some weird things here or over there that I've consumed before too. My philosophy is, hey, if I don't know what it is and it tastes good, don't tell me what it is. Okay, just let me enjoy it. Okay. Next question for you, Adina. Last question. What happened during a hilariously bad date? If you can recall a really bad date that was funny, what happened?
Let me think. I never really liked the concept of a date because it's just too forward. Like, going to a job interview, it makes you kind of anxious. But
Uh-huh.
I remember one time I thought I was on a date. I really liked the guy. And we were having a great conversation. And at some point, I felt his jacket vibrating. So I, told him, hey, your phone is ringing. Why don't you pick up? And he picked up and it was his girlfriend. And not only that, he actually invited her over and she came with her gay boyfriend. And we were, the four of us at the bar. She was talking to her gay boyfriend and he was talking to me. And we continued after that. She got a bit pissed. And I tried to convince him that he should behave in a different way and he should go after her because she left the bar and so on and so forth. And then at some point I was like, okay, I didn't expect to have your girlfriend on a date. And he said, well, next time you should, be more tenacious about bringing me home first and not her. And I was like, okay, but we're still friends, actually. I still get along very well with this guy. We never really got into a relationship, but we had always this great vibe, so it stayed.
That is funny. When it starts off like, hey, I thought we were on a date. It's going to be a funny story.
Yeah. But I think you just have like a different idea of what a date is, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Adina, this has been a blast. Thank you so much for coming on Innovators Can Laugh. I will include links to the Recursive and in the show notes for everybody listening. Hey, if you enjoy this, tell others about it. And you can check this video out on YouTube. Just look for Innovators Can Laugh. All right. Have a great week. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoyed it, I'd really appreciate it if you could give us a review and star rating. Also, don't forget to sign up for the ICO newsletter at innovatorscanlaugh.com, where you can get the bio and details of each guest. Thanks.